What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host, friendly neighborhood far-right thug, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're all doing well today. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. It is currently 4:05 on Saturday, the 5th of July, 2025. And we got some things to go over today. First things first, though, I'm going to hit pause 2 seconds. I realized I forgot to shut the door. All right, I'm back. So again, that would have been a very, very quick pause for you guys. So what do we got to go over today? Got some interesting things to go over, to say the least. Gonna start off with what has been making the rounds on social media at the moment, which, if you have seen, and again, it hasn't made you murderously angry, then I'm about to show you something which really, really should make you murderously angry. So we've covered how all up and down the country, in systematic operations of gangs that predominantly, in many instances, like in Rotherham, as was exposed by Operation Stovewood, that there were groups predominantly of Pakistani Muslim men systematically grooming, raping, trafficking, some of the worst crimes that we've seen, a rape genocide that we've seen on the British Isles. And it was denied. We were gaslit about it. We were all told diversity is our strength, multiculturalism, all this stuff. And recently, obviously, started to be exposed through the work of people like Baroness Casey, for example, who recently released the Casey report, which is basically the nail in the coffin for any kind of multiculturalism integration myth, okay? Going to be one of the pivotal things that is going to go in support of, in many instances, reversing not only just illegal immigration, but a lot of legal migration as well, and remigration. Because many of the people that did these things, not only the rape gangs and stuff like that, but many people who've done other crimes who come from other areas of the world, they've all come here legally. They've all come here legally because of the liberal elite open borders policy that we've had in this country. And the thing is, you think that when things like this get exposed in the way that they have done, when things like this are brought to light, that the people who've done them, you'd at the very least think that they would be in some way apologetic, as in they would be sorry, right? Not apologetic as in the defending the position sense, but as we'll see at the moment, that's what these people have chosen to take and do. These people feel not an ounce of remorse for what they did. They see it as unequivocally a good thing. It is nothing but a good in their eyes, what happened. And they are letting us know, and they are laughing at us about it, these people. So you had this recently that was released by Malik Butchers, the account on TikTok for what I believe is some kind of butcher shop or whatever. Presumably it's a halal butchers. I'm not exactly sure where they are based, but this is from @Malik Butchers on TikTok. And it's been making the rounds at the moment because a group of Muslims decided that it would be a good idea to actually mock the victims of the grooming gangs in a video in which one of them is portraying a stereotypical, quote-unquote, stereotypical British father with the English football jersey on, coming into the butcher shop very angry, wondering where his son is. And the person behind the counter says, "Oh, you mean halal kid?" That's the name that they give this child. The father, as you would imagine, explodes and goes, "That's not his fucking name." He says, "Oh yeah, he's just being groomed in the van at the back." And they end up going to this van, and he's having a haircut in the back of this van. And then a guy comes up behind him and says, "Well, what did you think we meant?" This is the video, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be coming up on screen for you now very shortly. This is why I won't hear any arguments for coexistence with these people anymore. Coexistence, multiculturalism, diversity, all of this stuff, no, it's done. It's done. If you still think any of that can be saved, or you think any of that is a good thing, well, you seriously need to have your head checked, because these people, make no mistake, are laughing at you, the useful idiot, alongside the victims of these gangs, who they see what happened to them and they think is a very, very good thing. Video coming to you now, ladies and gentlemen.
Where the is my son?
Oh, you mean Halal Kid?
That's not his name. Where is he?
He's getting groomed in the back of the van.
You are?
Hi, Dad.
Yeah, he's having his haircut. What did you think of him?
Where the
They're openly mocking them. Every young girl that was systematically raped, trafficked, drugged, every girl and family member that was failed by police, either due to politicization or due to active evil on the police's part, whatever it may have been, whether the police officer acted through fear of retribution and he knew what he was doing was wrong. You know, when they were going to the house of a young girl, for example, who was found drunk, potentially even plied with drugs. I believe I've covered the clip of the person giving the details of this case on the podcast before. Sadly, that person who was giving the speech in the clip is no longer with us, I believe. He was a journalist with a very, very good reputation. I've forgotten his name. His name escapes me. He says there was a young girl who didn't return home, and then she was found later on after somebody heard a scream in this house, drunk, potentially even plied with drugs. I believe she's only half conscious, with half dressed as well, in the company of, I think, of about 6 or 7 Pakistani men. The police turned up, they didn't do anything to the men, and they arrested her for being drunk and disorderly. That is the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. It's people like that young girl that these people are openly mocking, that these foreigners are openly mocking. They don't belong here. They don't belong here. It's as simple as that. They're not of our people. They're not of our faith, if you want to call it that. There's, a lot of people would argue that you go back far enough, our roots are in like Germanic paganism and stuff like that, but a lot of the customs and stuff like that, ratified by Christianity, if you will. We do have a very long going back Christian heritage, in England, for example, going back about 1,000 years, in Wales, potentially going back even further, about 1,500 years. We see Saint David, the patron saint of Wales, who brought the gospel to Wales, died in, I believe it was 500 AD. So you have these people, they don't have anything to do with us as a people, us as a land. They've been brought here because they're politically advantageous to the treacherous, treasonous liberal establishment that spans both conservative plaid, Labour, the Hezbollah that have recently splintered off on the left with Zara Satsuma and all the rest of them, right? The Greens, all of these parties are all part of this. They're all part of the same uniparty coalition, right? They're all doing the same things. They're all designed to destroy our once great countries. And then the people benefiting from this are actively laughing, despite the fact that they've committed a rape genocide against us as a people. Fact of the matter is, a crusade should have been declared a long time ago. I met with somebody recently that it made me question a lot of things when they said, the crusades are not something which we should look on fondly and stuff like that. And I can't help but think, when you look at the things that were going on in the Holy Land at that time, that, we're seeing the kind of stuff that was going on in the Holy Land at that time that led Pope Urban to call the Crusades. And we should be a lot angrier. We should be a lot angrier, and we should be just getting rid of these people one way or another. It's as simple as that. And remigration is a kindness for them. And make no mistake, the sectarianism, as I've spoken about time and time and time again, is not going anywhere. These people, as they've shown time and time again, when they have done things like blow themselves up in a concert arena in Manchester, for example, have shown they're willing to go to the death for this. So you got to think, maybe we need to be willing to as well. You have new Muslim group marches in Dewsbury, for example, which are scheduled for today. They were scheduled for today. I'm not sure if they ended up actually going ahead. But in Dewsbury, there was a quote-unquote peaceful demonstration that was scheduled for standing united against racism. standing united against racism. The latest focus on grooming gangs is causing divide in our communities. Had nothing to do with, bunches of Pakistani Muslims raping girls or anything. Nothing to do with that. That was, causing divide in communities because people didn't want that to happen to their daughters and stuff like that, right? Nothing to do with that. It's people being angry about that stuff that's causing the divide. Of course it is. It's people being angry about foreign rape jihad that are causing divide in British communities. They claim convictions were due to racism. They believe the gangs are the real victims. So, as I'll pull up on screen now for you, ladies and gentlemen, they released this image. This is their flyer. This is their flyer that they released. And it says here, peaceful demonstration. Let's stand united against racism. The latest focus on grooming gangs is causing divide in our communities. Saturday the 5th of July, Dewsbury Town Hall. Racist trials, a scandal of injustice. Sympathy for the victims. We want to extend our heartfelt sympathies to all those who have suffered from abuse. The pain and trauma inflicted on these individuals must be acknowledged. Not only that, I would say the perpetrators need to be removed from all of our countries. Simple as that. That's like the bare minimum starting point. They need to be sent back to Murpur or sent back to whatever shitty country they came from. Maybe we could start off sending some of them back to France. Apparently, there's been a misleading media focus. Many would argue the misleading media focus has come from years and years and years of people being called Islamophobes and racists, the exact kind of things that these people are saying now that actually led to the perpetuation of these atrocities. The misleading media focus is a very, very interesting one because now it's going to get to the point where they can't deny it. The media has been on their side. The media has been on the side of the perpetrators since day one to uphold this diversity and multiculturalism narrative. Impact on communities. The ongoing narrative contribute to a divisive atmosphere within our society, creating rifts and promoting polarization. Again, nothing to do with the fact that these rapes occurred, right? That's caused polarization and stuff like that, and how much we've seen the government go to cover up for these people. That has nothing to do with creating polarization, because we should just shut up and, not give a shit what's going on, right? We should just shut up and take it. The whole democratic socialism, right? And living in fear. Many families within our communities are now living in fear due to these stigmatizing representations which exacerbate existing tensions. So you have these people here fighting for fair trials, quote unquote. Well, that's what a lot of the victims have been doing for a long time, fighting for their justice. And they've been denied their justice time and time again, because of initiatives like these. But this is the thing you have to get into account at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. As we've let ourselves devolve, as we've let ourselves as a people and as a society devolve into degeneracy and to devolve into nihilistic secularism, right? As we've allowed ourselves to devolve into that, we paved the way for this kind of stuff. Because from a atheistic, materialistic perspective, you can't make the argument that anything that happened to these people was wrong, outside of a nebulous harm perspective, which you can't really define. Okay, you can't really define, because what constitutes harm, right? That's the only thing you can really do. And then it all boils down to relativism. So they think it's good, we think it's bad. Who's to say who's right and who's wrong? Ultimately, then, you have to then make the argument that you are in some way the objective moral authority as to why this is right and wrong. And to do that, then you have to basically put yourself in the position of what God would be, because God sets the morality for the universe by virtue of him being the creator, right? At least how it was understood for a long period of time, until we thought we were so enlightened that we didn't need him anymore. And then all of a sudden you have the defender of the faith in this country, quote unquote defender of the faith in this country, celebrating the number one cardinal sin outside of, I believe it was Buckingham Palace or Westminster. I think it was Buckingham Palace. Got a video of that to come later on in the episode, ladies and gentlemen. That'll be the thing that we round off on. We've got to take into account, this is the evil we have in our societies that we have imported. This is a foreign evil. This is a mixture of a foreign evil and us being indoctrinated and turning against ourselves and thinking that our own genocide and our own downfall is a good thing because we are inherently oppressors by virtue of skin color or by virtue of us living in a once great country that ruled a lot of the world, right? It's restorative justice, quote unquote, having to atone for past evils in today. And that's how a lot of these people think as well. A lot of these people that we've allowed to come into our communities are on a revenge conquest. And they make that explicitly clear. You only need to look at some of the comments in these threads on X, for example, and you see people making their intentions and making their outlook on these things perfectly clear. Things like, karma is a bitch. For things that your ancestors did, you can't expect us to be happy. You'd be like, Well, I had no part in that, so why am I guilty of it? Again, generational, what is it? It's a bit like North Korea's 3 generations of punishment system, whereby if somebody commits a crime against the state, they are not only guilty, but the next 3 generations of their family are also guilty. So their child, the grandchild, and then the great-grandchild are also going to suffer in like some kind of labor camp because of it. That's the kind of stuff that we have here. That's the kind of stuff that these people are thinking. Naturally, as people of the British Isles, you know, with our kind of morality, usually taken from Christian ethics, even if you don't want to acknowledge where the teachings come from, even if you don't want to acknowledge where the teachings come from, you want to take the bits from it. A lot of the people that try to make these objective arguments naturally apply it from Christian ethics because they're good ethics, right? We have to acknowledge somehow tacitly that they're good ethics because we want to take from those things. You know, where Christ says, for example, anybody who scandalizes a child or causes them to fall away, it would be better for them to have a millstone hung around their neck and thrown into the sea, right? And then that naturally extends out to, you know, people that would want to sexually abuse a child, for example, the exact thing that's going on in the rape gangs, right? It would be better for them to have a millstone thrown around tied around their necks and thrown into the sea. So it's a good moral system. It's a very, very good moral system. That's why it survived so long. That's why the church has survived some form or another with the schism and all things like this for about 2,000 years, right? Say what you want. If it was just, I think if it was just something that was being controlled and ordained and not overseen by anything greater, it was just a human thing, it wouldn't have lasted anywhere near as long. It wouldn't have lasted anywhere near as long because that's ultimately just a government, and governments rise and fall within potential generations of our time, where the church have stood the test of time for 2,000 years. That's always worth considering as well. But people who make these arguments, they have to take it from Christian ethics in order to make the objective moral claim, despite having no real moral foundation to do so because they don't believe in the actual... It's like they're taking the apples, but they don't like the apple tree. And they'll say that the apple tree isn't true. So then how do you end up with this apple? If the apple tree isn't true, how do you end up with this apple? You know, people don't think, because people don't spend time thinking through their actual thoughts anymore. People don't spend time in reflection as to what they believe in the nature of the universe and all stuff like that. And because we become so ignorant now, under the guise of us becoming more enlightened, now we're in this serious trouble, and now we have demonstrations on behalf of child rapists and grooming gangs and all of this stuff that are going to go ahead and have full government support as well for the most part. You know, they have the tacit backing of the government, if nothing else, because you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, we're a nation of immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants. Wales was built by immigrants. Did you know? That's what Alan Davis of the MS seems to believe. So he recently made the claim that Wales was not a country that was built on the backs of good men like my dad, my granddad, and people like that who are getting black lung down the mines and have contributed in every public service pretty much in this country, whether it's even just being, you know, menial things like driving buses. They, as I said, they were down the mines, you know. Very hard work. You don't see many of the suffragettes trying to, or any of the feminists nowadays wanting to be miners or wanting to be bricklayers and all stuff like that, right? You don't see any of them wanting to do that kind of stuff for the most part. Wales is a country that has apparently been built on immigration and by immigrants. And that would be very likely why he supports a nation of sanctuary. I got a feeling he supports a nation of sanctuary as well because he's banking on all those foreign votes coming in. So this is Alan Davis of Blaenau, Gwent. So you, my friends, in Blaenau, Gwent, Alan Davis believes it was not your mothers, fathers, and forefathers and your descendants that very likely a lot of people can trace their roots in this land going back, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it's not those people that built this land. You know, it's not those Welsh people, those Welsh men and women, generations of them going back, that built this land. No, it was Abdul and Ahmed and Mohammed that have just come over on the fucking boats that have built this land. Did you know? Did you know? So this is the MS for Blaenau Gwent, ladies and gentlemen, explaining to you how, you know, it's not the great men that were getting black lung down the mines that built this land. It's, it's all the foreigners.
Wales is a country that has been built on immigration and by immigrants. And my constituents are the consequences of that immigration, as are most of us in this room, in this chamber today. I have been a strong supporter of freedom of movement for the whole...
Unless his constituents are completely immigrants. No, your constituents are the result of human reproduction that goes back thousands of years from people who are ethnically of this land, Mr. Davis. Not because of immigration, unless you're tacitly saying that the people you care about, your constituents, are those coming in, i.e. the foreign voting bloc.
All of my adult life. And one of the greatest gifts that the European Union gave us was to remove those borders and to remove those border posts, to remove that need to demonstrate that we're unable to move from one piece of turf to another.
Think back, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into the rest of that clip. I don't think there's really anything more we need to go through with that clip. Think about all the women, the clips that we've been through on this show very recently, that they talk about one of the greatest things the EU done was to tear down the border posts, was to tear down all of these things, right? I'm sure the women of Europe right now, aside from the liberal, lefty, hyper-woke loonies, right, that are either not in any direct danger by virtue of them being in a very privileged position and being able to keep themselves away from all of the rapey foreigners that are coming across the border, right? A lot of women who are getting leered at, who are getting harassed on the daily by these migrant men because the EU has torn down all the borders and all the border posts and stuff like that, I don't think they're feeling very thankful. I don't think they're feeling very thankful. And it makes me sick that, you know, I'm being used as a political football in this way for this MS's, this disgusting traitorous MS's want to push this globalist anti-Wales, anti-West agenda alongside his other colleagues in the Senedd. All of them pretty much disgusting traitors. And really, really makes you think. Somebody made a post today, which I had a visceral, angry response to. They were saying the people of Wales, devolution has failed. The people of Wales cannot govern themselves. They've shown themselves incapable of governing themselves. Power must be taken away from them before they destroy themselves and present themselves as a threat to the rest of us. And I had a visceral, angry response initially when I saw this post. How dare you say this? You know, it's not the Welsh that are incapable of governing themselves and all of this stuff, right? Because I'm angry at my own government. But fact of the matter is, with the fruits that have come from devolution, you cannot say that this person was wrong. You cannot make a good argument as to why this person was wrong when you see the disgusting socialist hellscape that Wales has turned into. It tells you a lot. Where I left a comment on somebody's page right now about, they were talking about the Blaenau Gwent MS and stuff like that, and I said, well, sadly, it does appear that the voting bloc within Blaenau Gwent is very politically apathetic. They're naturally more liberal, left-leaning. They don't turn up for things. Very often, we have a minority of people making the decisions because you have less than a 50% voter turnout, and at the councillor rate or whatever, it's even worse. You end up with like 30-20%, whatever it is. People are done. People are done with the system because they don't perceive it as doing what it says on the tin to do, because it isn't. Because it isn't. It's not the fact that we're in a democracy and we all have a say. That's a sham. We're being ruled and we have no say in it. I would imagine if you suggested that all refugees in Gaza should be allowed to come to Wales, that would probably make your stomach turn. Unless you're what's his name? Unless you're Leigh Evans, for example, who's been dubbed the crying nurse of Cairo, who was giving a display outside of the Welsh Senedd recently, as we see. The iconic clip of the Welshman who went over to the Egyptian border with Gaza and was shooketh. He was shooketh when he was greeted with men with guns who weren't feeling the same way about the Gazan refugees that he wasn't filled with the same suicidal empathy that he was, because funnily enough, those Egyptian soldiers with guns may know a thing or two about that area, and that's maybe why they have such a big border wall with Gaza. Not to mention the tunnels, which, the terror tunnels which go underneath into Rafah and things like that from Egypt. That's a separate conversation. But, they have a big border wall for a reason, because they know a thing or two about that population. But it should surprise you, ladies and gentlemen, that Plaid Cymru MS for South Wales, social justice in early years, pronouns in bio, hi, she, her. Sioned Williams, the epitome of the woke, liberal female politician that, Lord, please deliver us from white liberal women, has suggested that all refugees in Gaza should be allowed to come to Wales. This could total in 1.5 million people, potentially. It would not only place huge pressure on our public services, they would present a very good risk of being able to be overtaken completely. For you may not know, ladies and gentlemen, just pull it up right now for you. Wales, as of, this is the most recent data this is just from Google. Wales only has about 3.164 million people total. We only have, just rounded down to 3 million. We only have 3 million people. If we were to then all of a sudden import 1.5 million people, without anything changing, obviously you'd have people dying and stuff like that. You know, a lot of little towns and stuff, they have a relatively older population now. Because from things like feminism and the feminist movement, people just aren't having kids anymore because feminism naturally bred to socialism, and that requires both people working for the most part and, not being able to have kids because you have nobody in the house to take care of them. So they rely on the school system. Then you wonder why they come out like a woke leftist lunatic. And then you remember, oh, the government wanted all of this because they wanted access to your children. So because of the decisions that we've made, which in my opinion largely stem back to the feminist movement, which then largely stems back, why it's a spiritual conflict, because that just outright stems back to a rejection of God and going along with Satan's ideals. Satan's like the prime number one feminist, right? We only have 3.2 million people thereabouts. We then want to bring in 1.5 million foreigners. And you think that's not going to have any effect on Wales whatsoever? Already then, you're then up to, so what is that? That's about 4.5 million people. You've got a potentially 1.5 million person strong foreign army in your lands, and then they only need to be dispersed in certain areas, and they'll completely shift the voting demographics because you think they're not going to give them the right to vote. Of course they bloody will. And then we'll end up really in a bad place. I said this on X recently. Whatever you think of Labour, Plaid are worse. I think they're kind of on par with each other, but Plaid are even more extreme than Labour on these things. And if Sioned here was to ever come to the levers of power in Wales, and people like her, God help us.
Is Wales ready and willing to welcome all refugees from Gaza, and not only those with British passports? There are 1.5 million internally displaced people in Gaza, which is more than half of the population, and half of all housing in the besieged Gaza Strip has already been destroyed or damaged. Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, along with City of Sanctuary, has called on the UK government to welcome Palestinian refugees to the UK and for the international community to commit to a worldwide refugee programme for the people of Gaza. Once the UK has done this, the First Minister of Scotland has said that their country was willing to offer safety and sanctuary to those being forced to flee death, disease.
If they do this, there'll be make no mistake, if they do this, you can follow the subtitles on if you want to hear more of this. Believe me, if they do this, there will need to be a mass refugee program for Welsh people who will all of a sudden become besieged in their own land. Make no mistake about it. People like Sioned here want to import votes to not allow the Welsh people to have control over their destiny. She's a disgusting traitor, as many of these politicians are. They are only concerned with being able to keep themselves in power, because with everything that they have done, with everything Labour have done, with everything Plaid have done, even with everything the Conservatives have done in Westminster and stuff like that, you can't really say Conservatives in Wales because we haven't had Conservatives in Wales for half a century, for a quarter of a century. So you can't really say the Conservatives in Wales, but you can in Westminster. All of them are only concerned now with trying to keep themselves in power so that they can keep their position secure. Because if they were to be removed from power and they were to not have the protections of the state and all of these kinds of things, can you imagine what the public want to do to them? Can you imagine what the public want to do to them? I can't remember who it was, what quote I saw recently, but it was a quote, and it was saying a great lamentation, the fact that more politicians aren't hanged. I can't remember who it was. Was it? I don't think it was Chesterton. I can't remember who. I can't remember exactly who it was. But this is what these people want to do. The people whom these people are meant to be representing are being actively, by their policies that they're passing, persecuted by them. And obviously these people are the most privileged in society. You don't really get more privileged than the leaders of a nation. You know, you get pretty much everything taken care of. You get access to taxpayer funds, which then obviously you can use for pretty much whatever fuck you want, unless you're accountable to God. You're accountable to nobody for the most part. You know, there's no more privileged position than, say, the President of the United States, even with all the responsibility that falls on top of them. You know? There's no more privileged position. You're not going home every night and worrying about when your next meal's going to come, how you're going to manage to pay your rent, all of these things, right? You're not worried about those things that the bottom tier of society are worried about. Worried about their lights going off, worried about they're going to be able to put food on the table for their kids, all of these things, right? Then worried about what they're learning in school. You have access to all the best schooling for your children. You'll have access to the best private tutors. You don't even need to send them to the schools. They're not going to worry about, can you afford the extracurricular activities to put them on like a school football team or to, to run a little small football team in your local town or something like that for your kids so they can have something fun to do on the weekends and stuff like that. You're not going to worry about any of that. Money and all things like this, not an issue for these people. Not an issue for these people. And then they're doing all of the things to make life worse for the people at the bottom. Because they have no moral... they have a moral compass, it's completely inverted, but they have no moral accountability. We decided, for whatever reason, as a society, that we didn't want that moral accountability anymore. Either through reasons of saying that it doesn't exist, or the reasons of saying that we know better. And you need to look at history to say that when humans think they know better, things don't tend to go very well. As soon as they start to get prideful, things don't go very well. As I say, pride comes right before a fall. And I think a big fall is coming for these politicians. They know it. They know their people aren't happy. So they're trying to do everything possible now to make sure they don't get caught up in the avalanche that is coming. Because people are angry. People are angry, being lied and gaslit and taken advantage of for so long. I mentioned to you the outlook of people on our side, the outlook of our own people, where they're campaigning for their own destruction, where they don't care about issues that are going on at home, but they'll be so vocal about things going on over the other side of the world. Charlie Kirk was completely right at the moment, where whatever side of the aisle you stand on, whether you're right, whether you're left, whether you're in the middle, focusing so much on things that are going on the other side of the world, and all of this is obviously going on in the most liberal, upper class, universities in like Oxford and Cambridge, where again, those people are coming from those ultra wealthy families where mommy and daddy's money will take care of everything, They don't have a single problem in their entire fucking life for the most part, other than just doing the base level of studying and, end up coming out of an indoctrinated lefty loony with, rainbow-coloured hair and, more nose rings than a fucking bull, right? We have Leigh Evans, for example, not the comedian, one of the greatest comedians of all time, in my opinion, who's been dubbed the crying nurse of Cairo after a display of emotion at the Egyptian border. And he has finally showed his true colours today. So there was a video that came out a little while ago of this Welshman went to the Egyptian border. I believe it was the border with Gaza, if I'm not mistaken, and, was caught on camera. People were taking the piss out of him. I took the piss out of him for crying, going on about all of this oppression and all of this stuff, right? And the Egyptian guards there, the Egyptian border guards with their guns, you'll see a little snippet of it now. I'm not sure exactly how long it is. But you have these Egyptian guards, and they just look at him like, what, I think they're trying not to burst out laughing, right? Because they know exactly how radical the Gazan population is. That's why they have such a big fucking border wall with them. But later on, ladies and gentlemen, Leigh Evans, after he was removed and came back from Cairo, after he was removed, was outside the Senate a couple days ago and was chanting the Bob Violin chant, or Bob Villain, however the fuck you say it. I don't really care. I just want to hear him called Bob Remigrated. That's what I want to hear him called. But showing his true colours, starts then shouting death, death to the IVF, death, death to IVF indeed. Not the sad victims, the embryonic humans of IVF, but to the process as a whole, so it doesn't kill more people. But here he's shouting death, death to the IDF, whilst draped in some kind of what looks to be Islamic garb. He honestly looks like the devil with a turban on. What he looks like, because it's bright red, and he's chanting through a megaphone with a Palestinian flag in the background right in front of the Senate. So, showing exactly where his allegiances is. Allegiances aren't to Wales. They're not to Wales. He evidently identifies more as a quote-unquote Palestinian. But again, don't really care about, whatever side of the people, aisle people fall on with regards to the conflict in the Middle East at the moment, okay, about that's taking up so much of our thought when we have, and discourse when we have so many problems going on at home, and people are more invested in what's going on in a foreign country, between two foreign, if you want to call them countries, whatever, between those two foreign entities over the things that are happening at home. And that was something that Charlie Kirk said in his debate with Ginge, with the Ginger student. And he's completely right about. And this is it encapsulated in this video now, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm a Muslim, I'm a pacifist.
Allow us to march to Gaza. We're peaceful people, we're good people.
So back to the IDF.
We're good and peaceful people.
I'm a Muslim.
Right, watch this now, ladies and gentlemen. Watch this now. He's a pacifist. He's a pacifist, quote unquote. He's good people.
So back to the IDF. Back to the IDF. Muslim, I'm a Muslim.
Wasn't what that voice, wasn't what the Welsh accent was created for. The Welsh accent was to sing the Welsh national anthem, be a good choir voice. It was not built for jihad chants, and this is quite clear, the evidence of that. It was not meant, the Welsh accent, the accent that is of my home, was not meant to chant death to the IDF. It was not meant to chant death to the IDF. It was designed for songs like Amawheed. That's what it was designed for. And Leigh is proving that point time and time again. And speaking of us either not having enough problems, and this led to a funny interaction that I had on X recently with how much the government is spaffing your money up the wall. I go on about time and time and time again with the octopus of all the charities that they fund. Taxpayer-funded Charity's GAY Bird checklist. I'm not joking, ladies and gentlemen. There's a taxpayer-funded charity, which I believe is called, what is it? Here it is, a Wildlife Trust of South and West Wales, and the page ended up actually blocking me after this, which was hilarious, and I'll explain why in a moment. It says, Schomer's Gay Bird Checklist. The following checklist includes our breeding species that cross-reference with a list of birds that display homosexual behaviour. And as you know, if you want to pass anything intellectual nowadays, ladies and gentlemen, and make yourself appear smart, you need a citation and a year in brackets. So we have a Bagamihi 1999 is the citation. And apparently the Kittiwake, if that's how you say it, or the Kittiwake, however you say it, Shelduck, the Razorbill, the Jackdaw, how dare they insult my beloved Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag ship like this, Guillemot, the Shag, okay, that one, okay, maybe I can buy that one, and the Raven all come under Schomer's Gay Bird checklist. And it was so ludicrous because, does it say on this how much they, it doesn't say on the post which I've got here how much they are receiving, but this is the post that they released. So this is what taxpayer money gets spent on in Britain, in Wales. This is what taxpayer money gets spent on in Wales. So as you can see here, ladies and gentlemen, this is Schomer's Gay Bird checklist. The fact of the matter is, what's really going to depress me is how many people just won't see a problem with this. How many people just won't see a problem, right? That's what's going to really get me, I think. And how many people, you can guarantee it, with the state of the education we have in this country, they're going to look at the checklist and be like, oh my God, I didn't know the jackdaw was gay. That's the kind of thing people are going to think when they look at this, right? And believe me, they will. Believe me, and that's why we're in a certain, position where we are as well. It's because we've allowed people to vote that really shouldn't be able to vote. But you have here, these are the birds that are on there: the Kittiwake, the Shelduck, the Razorbill, the Jackdaw, the Guillemot, the Shag, and the Raven. Right. So there was a post that they made, however. When they made this post, now, you may not know about this, ladies and gentlemen, X, the social media platform, allows you to look on there and see replies that people have hidden. Which is why, really, when people hide replies, like you might curate comments on a YouTube video and stuff like that, it really doesn't work on X, because you can just tap a little button right next to the post, and it tells you the replies that they've hidden for whatever reason, right? And a lot of times it's because there's criticism or something like that. But I thought this was quite funny. So I made a post quoting this because I digged into the replies. There was one hidden reply to this post because I didn't exactly have many, quotes or comments or anything like that, views, whatever, because it's quite a small account. But it was a post somebody replied to this, and they said, Schomer Island, inclusive to all except wheelchair users, and turns off comments when called out for it. It can be done. Your excuses like, quote, cornerstone, unquote, are weak. And it received 1 like. Right. So then they hid that reply. And I had to. I screenshotted it and I quoted their post, the Gay Bird post. I said, you hiding replies that are calling you out for hiding replies when you're called out is objectively hilarious, possibly even more so than the Gay Bird nonsense. And I was blocked for it. And they've since removed the Gay Bird post as well, by the way. So this is a post from a different account that still has the screenshot up of the post. So yeah, they've now removed the post about the gay... Got a laugh. They've removed the post about the Gay Birds. No surprise. No surprise. My camera's gone out of focus. No surprise there either. So they've removed the post about the Gay Birds. In fact, I'm going to just adjust my camera just a little bit. Oh no, wrong way. In the hope that it keeps me in focus a little bit more. There we are. Focus should be me, not Oppenheimer in the background. But they've now taken down the post about the Gay Birds. And yeah, I thought it was funny. And that tells you a lot about the credibility of the account and the credibility of a lot of the things that are being funded by the Welsh government. They're not exactly very credible because as soon as you call them out for hiding comments, calling them out about hiding comments, they block you. So yeah, that was really, really hilarious. It was really, really funny. But what's not funny, ladies and gentlemen, however, is we mentioned about the Nation of Sanctuary, mentioned about Plaid Cymru MSs, all of these, liberal traitors wanting to destroy our countries and destroy our people. Yvette Cooper is also one of them. Labour's Home Secretary Yvette Cooper refused. She kept dodging the question, right, that was posed to her by, I can't remember who this LBC anchor's name is, but refugees welcome Yvette Cooper. In this instance, anybody who has a refugees welcome sign literally might as, again, if they said imported votes or imported gang rapists, people would give the game, it would give the game away and people would understand what was going on. So she was quizzed on LBC about stopping or reducing the small boat crossings, the boat migrant crossings. And she refused to say definitively if the boat crossings would come down. And that's obviously because it's within her interest and within the interest of the Labour establishment to keep the boats coming across. There was a recent video, a little showy video, nothing more than a propaganda piece of the French police slashing a migrant boat as it was going to make its way to England's shores. And obviously they could have been doing this all the time. They're just choosing not to because Macron's regime is truly treasonous against his own people and ours as well, because we pay him hundreds of millions of pounds or euros, whatever it is, every year to keep these boats from coming across, and he actively doesn't do it. And what really shocked me is that people were saying that we should be giving bonuses to the French police who do this. I'm like, we already give them hundreds of millions every year to already do this. You want to give them more? All of a sudden there's a clip that comes out of them doing it to one boat, which I think had about 30 odd people on it, and you want to give them bonuses as an incentive? Tell me how the incentive isn't already the hundreds of millions that we give them every year. But anyway, this is Yvette Cooper, ladies and gentlemen. Again, doing what the Uniparty does best, not answering questions, and ensuring, at least by not answering the questions, ensuring that we actually do know the answer, that they're not going to do anything about the small boat crossings. They're just going to allow it to continue because they want these votes coming in.
Home Secretary, can you tell me the numbers will decline this time next year?
Well, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to get those boat numbers coming down. We need to, and no one should be making those boat crossings. So that is,
that is what we need to do, Home Secretary, but will we do it? Will the numbers be declining this time next year?
The things that we are working to do at the moment, it means strengthening the law enforcement, and we need the law to change in Germany so that we can clear out the warehouses that are being held in Germany. We need the stronger law enforcement.
I think they make the boats in Turkey, don't they? And they make the engines in Germany. So for the third time, can you... When we talk this time next year to celebrate your 2 years in office, will you be able to say, look, the numbers have come down for the third time of asking?
That is exactly what I want to be able to come into the studio and say that to you. But as you know, Nick, we will do absolutely everything we can to go after the gang networks. 3 times. Also to develop new arrangements around returns, for example, as well.
3 times.
So working to do.
3 times.
Mr. McFadden
he asked.
3 times and he can't say.
Again, the other guy you just said has been asked 4 times and he can't say. Again, because they don't want, they do not want the boat crossings to stop. It's their voter base that's coming over. It's more and more of what they see as their voter base coming over. Does it make sense yet, British man or woman? Does it make sense yet that they're doing this so that your vote, so that your say has less and less and less and less meaning, less power, until it has no power at all? Till democracy no longer exists, other than just as a part of a word in the wider democratic socialism that, you know, of North Korea and places like that, right? Does it make sense yet? And again, she can't answer that question, because if she was to say, yes, they will come down, and as she knows they won't come down, they'll very likely go up, or at least remain the same. If she says they would come down, and then they don't come down, they can then just get her banged to rights and said, you didn't do what you said you would. You were in charge of this, you didn't get it done. So at the very, they got her on incompetence, basically, or malice. They've either got her incompetence or malice. She's trying to play the word game so that she doesn't get caught, you know, caught in these, oh, you just didn't do what you said you would. Because then at least she could say, well, I didn't say that we were going to be able to get them down. I said that I was going to try. That's the kind of line they're going to try and pull in a couple of years' time, when this inevitably gets worse. And when you think about the people coming over, ladies and gentlemen, like we mentioned with St. John Lloyd School, getting kids to think about being a Syrian refugee, quote unquote, and coming over here, avoiding border crossings, pure indoctrination, all of this stuff, right, that we talked about in the last episode. Here's the thing. What are the people coming over bringing to this country? I ask you time and time again. What are the people coming over bringing to this country? Well, in terms of in Netherlands, in the Netherlands, they're bringing, as they've seen on even in America and places like that, they're bringing honor killings. Now, ask yourself, do we want honor killings in the name of a foreign god on our land? Do we want honor killings going on in the UK? Because this is what happened in Netherlands recently. 18-year-old, this lady was 18 years old, and this is another nail in the coffin of the integration myth. Because the reason why she was killed, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely important. So what happened here? This lady, a Muslimah, very likely in it by force of her dad and brothers, she was killed in an honor killing. And what her dad and brothers did, because she was dating a Dutch boy, and she wasn't wearing a headscarf. Do you want to know what they did, ladies and gentlemen? They taped her up and drowned her in a canal. They taped her up and drowned her in a canal because she wasn't wearing the religious garbs and she was dating a Dutch boy. Because the dad and the brothers, she was drowned for being too westernized. That's what she was killed by. And obviously you have the standard apologists for it in the comment section of this post. But I'm going to show you this, ladies and gentlemen, because I want this young girl's memory to live on. This was the girl in question. I want her memory to live on. And for those who are listening or watching, ladies and gentlemen, it says on the screen, 18-year-old honor-killing victim tied up and drowned by her father and brothers for being too, quote-unquote, westernized. I don't want to hear anything ever again about integration, about multiculturalism, about diversity, about any of this stuff. I never want to hear it ever again. When these people are killing their own, they're killing their own family. A dad killed his own daughter, and brothers killed their own sister because she wasn't going along with the backwards religious customs. And she was showing signs of actual integration with the place that very likely by choice they had moved to. She was then drowned in a canal, tied up and drowned in a canal. Can you imagine how terrifying her last moments would have been? That she's tied up, unable to do anything, unable to breathe, the burning of the water going into your lungs, whilst it's happening to you by your own family. By your own family, because you dared to actually adopt some of the customs of the society which likely you willingly moved to. And very likely your father at least would have had say on where you went to as being head of the family. These people are not like us. I feel terribly sorry for this lady. I feel terribly sorry for this lady. May God rest her soul. These people are not like us. They have no business being here. And these customs, if you ask me in an objective sense, they have no place anywhere on the planet. Not even in Muslim countries where they say that this is how Muslim countries are, or whatever. Things like this have no place on the planet anywhere. They have no place on God's green earth. But again, this kind of stuff, the integration, multicultural mob doesn't want you to know. Doesn't want you to look at. Because that goes against their agenda. They don't want you speaking about stories like this because it goes against their agenda. VAUSH was another one recently who didn't like it when things go against his agenda. So before we go on about the rest of this stuff, such as the real kind of conflict that we're in and why there's a spiritual conflict, this is a funny clip to go over, ladies and gentlemen. VAUSH is a liberal, left-wing, I believe he's more so even not just liberal, but outright communist streamer, right? He's a streamer. And it's very funny to watch him get his ass kicked in repeated debates and stuff like that. But he was watching this recently, and somebody posted this clip from VAUSH's stream, and it says, "It's all just this clip." And I want you to watch how quickly VAUSH, this white knighting, believe all women, woke liberal lefty, goes from, oh, West is so evil, we have this rape culture, this is why Me Too movement happened, because women weren't being believed, they're not taken seriously, all this stuff. Watch how quickly, Leigh, you want to be careful with how quickly he moves from that side of the boat, that side to the other side of victim blaming, because it goes against his other presuppositions. Watch out, Leigh, you might break your neck with how quickly this man 180s on this clip. So here's the initial preamble for the clip, ladies and gentlemen, where where VAUSH goes on about this really long ramble about rape culture and all stuff like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because I'm over here.
You know what? Okay, I'm gonna here. Wait, hold on. I should probably move my webcam down because I'm like blocking their faces. I've been doing it the whole video. I just want to say, do you think it maybe speaks a little bit to the fact that we have a rape culture when we put 6 people in a room together to talk about Me Too, and when they're like, hey, who of you have experienced sexual assault, and the 4 women sit down and they've all been raped and they all can barely choke out a coherent sentence. Do we think this perhaps maybe slightly speaks to the fact that there's a problem? Like, Me Too has gone too far. False allegations are ruining people's lives. Okay. Who among you have experienced sexual assault and like every woman in the room starts crying? Like, almost every female friend I have has been the recipient of sexual assault or violence or rape or whatever at some point in their lives. Seriously, it's such a common thing. I think 1 in 4 is probably understating it significantly. I wouldn't be surprised if the rate for sexual assault on women over one's lifetime was as high as 1 in 3 or 1 in 2. We just don't know because nobody fucking reports, because reports aren't taken seriously. That's what Me Too is about.
Right. Remember this, ladies and gentlemen, just before we get into the rest of the clip. Reports aren't taken seriously. They're not believed. It's likely even underrepresented. It could be as high as 1 in 3. Wouldn't be surprised if it's 1 in 3, all of this stuff, right? We have a systematic rape culture in the Western world. We are such moral degenerates and all of this stuff, right? In some instances, a lot of the people we're bringing over from these other backwards cultures certainly do have a rape culture. But VAUSH would never allow himself to believe that, would certainly never allow anybody to say that, without at least explaining and going off on about why they're wrong and horrible and all of these things, right? Especially if it turns out that, you know, the police didn't follow up on this rape story because, say, for example, the perpetrator was of the wrong race and the wrong religion, that the untouchable race and the untouchable religion in our society, right? No, that could never happen. Obviously, every single rapist or person involved in rape culture is obviously a white, heterosexual, very likely Christian man, right? Of course it is. Remember everything VOUSH just said, ladies and gentlemen. Remember everything he just said about women not being believed, about how things aren't taken seriously, about that's why Me Too happened, all of this stuff, right? About rape culture, about rape rates, all of this stuff that you can sit 6 women down in a room and 4 of them have been raped. Watch what happens now, ladies and gentlemen.
You're like, I don't think things are on the same level, but things impact you in like bizarre ways. But yeah, like because the perpetrator wasn't white, and because he was like, I'm, you know, part of like a certain religion.
Wait, are we being real?
And the police were basically just like, we can't because of cultural
Here we go.
differences, which I don't feel like
Strap in.
What? Bullshit. Are you fucking kidding me? Did she turn her fucking rape confession into how the refugees fucking Ahmed Muhammad raped her and the police were like, oh, we can't persecute brown people? Bullshit. Bullshit.
Told you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you watched your neck. I hope you held it in place because Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. So again, because it did not fit VOUSH's preperceived notions of how all of this works, because a rapist happened to be, as we've seen in the UK, for example, it is exceedingly common. It is exceedingly common. Again, Operation Stovewood. In fact, I'm gonna go find the graph a bit quick. This is completely off the cuff. I wasn't exactly gonna do this at the moment. But you remember from last time, ladies and gentlemen, that we covered, not last time, the time before, we covered this exactly. We covered exactly this. So you know from before that in Operation Stovewood, which was in Rotherham, and this is looking at child sexual abuse and exploitation, mind you, that nearly 2/3 came from a Pakistani ethnic background. So here you go. You remember this graph from before. You'll remember this graph from before. This can't happen, according to VOUSH. This can't happen. And if you say that it did happen, you're turning a rape confession. You're turning a rape confession into the refugees, Ahmed and Abdul and Abdullah and Mohammed and all of these people are coming over doing this. Yeah, yes, they are. Because VOUSH could never believe, for example, that Islam wasn't just solely a religion of peace and that, you know, generations of young British children have been sacrificed on the altar of rape jihad and all stuff like that. That could never happen. That could never, ever happen. There could never be a system in which, you know, a white person was a victim in anything, in any kind of thing. Could never, ever, ever happen in VOUSH's worldview. You know, it could never be that somebody who was black and a Muslim could ever be, you know, the wrongdoer. But that's how quickly these people turn against them. And then, again, they see supposed friends like VOUSH. You've got to be careful who you talk to with these things, ladies and gentlemen. You've got to be careful who you talk to with these things, ladies and gentlemen. I think that's why a lot of people, when Tommy Robinson was trying to bring people to light about, to bring to light what was going on with the rape gangs creating the rape of Britain and stuff like that, a lot of the women that he talked to, a lot of them didn't initially want to talk to him because they disagreed with his politics. They thought his politics was abhorrent. But they did see that even though they might have disagreed with him politically, on everything, vehemently, that at the very least it seemed that he had some kind of principles that he was going with, and at least he was going to tell the truth, that he was actually going to be there for them and support them. A lot of victims have said that even though we hated Tommy Robinson initially, one of the girls came and said, I absolutely hated him, hated his politics, hated this, hated that. But he was one of the ones that actually was there for them. So it's kind of thing, right? It's kind of funny how the people who initially want a white knight for you and simp for you and all of these things, right? That as soon as you say things that go against some other thing that they have, you know, that if you were to tell them all of a sudden, oh, you perpetrate, the person who raped me was this and this, and they've got it into their mind that it can't be anything other than the exact opposite of that, they'll turn on you. Oh, no, you're just politicizing your rape confession because you hate black people or you hate brown people or you hate Muslims and stuff like that, right? Whereas somebody who initially you liked this person because you got along with them politically, and then as soon as, or you just got along with them because they tried to be your friend or they said this and that, you know, how empathetic and good-natured they are, and then all of a sudden you say this and they turn on you. They turn on you and they stab you in the back. And let you know what a bad person you are. Or how could you say that? They're such an underrepresented minority. They already get enough problems as it is, and now you're going to say that? Didn't matter that you were raped then. It only matters then that you don't upset the apple cart. That's what matters. Whereas you can have somebody like Tommy Robinson who you hate, but at the very least, you know, he's actually going to be there for you because he actually cares about what you've been through and wants to try and help you in some way to bring your perpetrators to justice. VAUSH would never do that. People like VAUSH would never do that. Because I want to show you the spirit that a lot of these people are being corrupted by now, ladies and gentlemen. If you think that this isn't a spiritual conflict, I will show you why it is a spiritual conflict and why we really do need to pray for these people. So in an LGBTQ pride event, they recently had a quote-unquote debaptism booth. And it is as depressing and disappointing as that name sounds. Debaptism booth, a booth that's designed to give them this thing, whatever it does, some kind of satanic ritual that unbaptizes them somehow. See, a baptism is something in Christianity you can only have done once. You know, it can only be done once. It washes away the stain of original sin, which is the idea in Christianity, and it's after that you are then eligible basically to be accepted into God's kingdom at the end of your life, right? That's basically the idea. You have to go through baptism first. You have to clean your soul of original sin. So these people are undergoing their debaptism in a booth where people were debaptized in what I think is potentially, ladies and gentlemen, the lamest thing I've ever seen. So this is footage from America right now, ladies and gentlemen. This is the debaptism booth that the LGBT Unbreakable Wi-Fi Code Mafia set up for people to be, quote-unquote, debaptized.
Please dry the water from your head you never consented to. It'll let guilt evaporate and shame fall away. You are one. You are whole. And you belong. Congratulations.
So,
dry the water from your head you never.
For those of you
that
are watching and not listening, not watching, you have a booth. We had this liberal gentleman and this very obese lady sat in the chair with a hat on. And it says, what does he say? You wash away the water that you never consented to, let guilt and sin fall away. It has reason, and it's being driven away, ladies and gentlemen. All of this love and Holy Spirit that was imparted onto this lady by the baptism is being driven away, as I put it on full screen again, by a hairdryer with reason on it. By a hairdryer with reason on it, which I don't think these people are actually capable of. But he says, let guilt evaporate, let guilt, whatever it is, fall away, and you are now unbaptized, whatever the fuck that means. So I didn't know that, what was this, Tresemme? Did Tresemme do unbaptisms now? Is that the way that this works? But yeah, obviously this is just completely ludicrous, ladies and gentlemen, but it shows who these people are actually loyal to. It shows where this whole movement comes from that led to every other kind of degeneracy that we have in this society. Ultimately, what it roots back to is rejection of God. What ultimately also comes back to a rejection of God as well is how you treat, for example, young people's young nieces, for example, that think it's hilarious that a detransitioner, Layla Jane, had her breast removed when she was 13, and how your family members die because they got caught up in the whole trans ideology and stuff like that. You really see the spirit behind the movement, or spirits behind the movement, take hold of this gentleman, take hold of this gentleman here, ladies and gentlemen. I want to show you this next one on screen so you really understand what this whole movement comes back to, why we need to root it out of our societies, but not only that, how we're going to root it out. We're not going to root it out as humans. We're not going to root it out solely as humans. We need something bigger and stronger than us.
It does not affect you, and it does not hurt you. Nothing here hurts you. Why do you care so much about other people not doing the things that you want them to do?
Because I know people that have been permanently harmed. I have friends.
No,
no,
you don't have any friends. You have no fucking friends.
This stuff killed my niece.
No fucking
My niece is dead because of the testosterone.
You have no friends. I guarantee you.
Is it okay with you?
When you die, there will be no one at your funeral.
Is it okay with you if a 13-year-old gets her breast cut off? Is that okay with you?
What is the reason her breast got cut off?
They told her she was a boy.
Oh, they told her she was a boy? Maybe she told them that she felt like she was a boy, and her doctor and everybody said that. And they don't cut their breast off, you stupid twat.
For those who didn't see that, John, I just made the sign of the cross because this video makes me viscerally angry. This video makes me viscerally angry. This is the kind of spirit that has corrupted and gotten into these people. You see it there. You see the spirit there. Mocking a young girl, this man's niece who died, and a young girl who at 13 had her breasts removed, and later went on to detransition. Mocking them. And obviously we know this is part of a wider sterilization narrative and depopulation narrative. We know that. It's the only way it makes sense, right? Pray for these people. And I got viscerally angry there. Because just for saying this guy, oh, you have no friends, you're not cool, all this stuff and that stuff. As if he can't have family members that can be affected by this stuff. You can't have a niece that dies and somebody else who knows that had her breasts cut off and God knows what other very, very sad realities they're going to have to deal with now in life as a result of the care, quote-unquote care that they were given, the gender-affirming care, you know, the sterilization, the hormones that are going to bring on osteoporosis, potentially even when she's in her early 20s, you know, all of this stuff. And these people laugh at them. These people laugh at them. Because Satan's laughing now with how many souls that he has under his influence. And I just want to play that last bit. It was that last sort of 10 seconds or so. I'm going to play it again. And I'm going to put it up on full screen. So I realize I brought the volume down. I want to play this last bit on full screen again for you, ladies and gentlemen. This is where, at least in my mind, as far as I'm concerned, the spirit came through. The spirit, in some instances, evil spirit manifested.
Piece of
Tell
shit.
her that she didn't get her breast cut off.
Tell Jane that the puberty blockers are going to stop all the little kids from reproducing, guys. This is what you sound. You sound like a fucking idiot, dude.
That is an evil spirit, in my opinion, that manifests. It might just be wrong. It might just be that this person is evil down to their very bones. Who knows? But he certainly needs it. He needs a lot of prayers. He needs a lot of prayers right now, because nobody should be, joyfully celebrating child sterilization and mutilation. Nobody should be joyfully celebrating this. Only Satan joyfully celebrates this kind of stuff, right? So there's also Lily Allen needs our prayers as well. British singer Lily Allen laughs on his podcast, I believe it is, about not being able to remember how many abortions she's had. I believe the lady she's talking to has had about 4 or 5 as well, by the sounds of it. I believe they say it could be 4, could be 5. They think it's funny and they're bragging about how many of their own children they've killed. This is where feminism's really evil fruits have come to bear. That you have so many children, like I've said, and no matter what stage of life that they're at, they're still children because they're a human life. They're a human life from the moment they come into conception. Don't care if that statement offends you, that's a statement of fact. They're a human life from the moment they come into conception. So ending that human life is murder. Doesn't matter what way you slice it. Now, tragedies can happen. And ultimately, when the things do happen, you know, if the Almighty has decided, you know, that life is to be ended, that's not for us to say. That's not for us to say. We can have problems with that. If we are going to say, you know, where it's okay for us in one system to say when something is life and when something is not, and when it's okay for us to end life, and we got to be able to impart that authority to the Almighty who's higher than us as well. But these people laugh and think it's funny about how many of their own children they've murdered. And this is just heartbreaking. So this is from Kristen Hawkins' account, and it's very enlightening to see that in America at the moment, they recently had a very big, I believe it was, Supreme Court victory where they defunded Planned Parenthood, at least at the federal level. Planned Parenthood, basically a Satan's wet dream. It's Satan's wet dream, Planned Parenthood was. And yeah, this is the Lily Allen clip I was talking about.
Abortions. I've had a few, right. But then again, I can't remember exactly how many.
What, really?
Yeah.
Why didn't this come up in last week's episode when we were just talking about abuations?
Because I was just letting you run with it.
Reveal everything.
I can't remember. Yeah, I think maybe like, I want to say 5, 4 or 5.
Yeah, I've had about 5 too. And Lily, I'm so happy I can say that and you can say it and no one came to shoot us down.
Fucking hell, man. 4 or 5. So say they both had 5 apiece. That's 10 kids. Between these 2 ladies, that's 10 kids. 10 human lives that have been... 10 human lives that have been denied experience of this world. Unjustly, unfairly. So they can go out and have, meaningless sex just whenever the fuck they want. So they can get away from natural consequences of their actions. And they champion it. They champion it. They think it's a good thing. They sing about it. Fucking hell, she sings about it. This is why Satan is the greatest feminist, the biggest feminist you'll ever see. That's who these people serve. Very sadly, very, very sadly, that is who the royal family serve as well. One other thing before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start rounding it out now. This is a letter from the Home Office to somebody in Salford. And I just want to read you this little bit from the letter. So the person who posted this said this was found in a hotel room. The person entered on a fake passport and after being detained was granted a 4-star hotel stay. Because obviously this was found in one of these asylum hotels. Says here, statement of specific reasons. The person, by the way, is 23 years old. It says on their date of birth they were born in 2002. Statement of specific reasons. You have admitted to an immigration officer to entering the United Kingdom via plane yesterday using a false passport. You did not seek the correct permission to enter the UK. You were therefore considered an illegal entrant. Entry without leave. This is an offence under Section 1A of the Immigration Act 1971. Case amended after he, it says here, claimed asylum afterwards. Apparently this person, however, is to be detained. Not before, however, he was put up in a 4-star hotel, given board and lodge or whatever it is, bed and breakfast, and all at the expense of the UK taxpayer. And yet people will just think that this is normal, and nothing is wrong here. This guy admitted that he came in as an illegal entrant on a false passport, and we didn't just send him on the next plane back home. Or didn't just detain him in a detention facility, maybe in Alligator Alcatraz, for example. No. He stayed in a 4-star hotel. And you wonder why more and more of these people keep coming here from safe countries like France. And this is the last bit, ladies and gentlemen. So the royal family posted this July 5th, today, 9:30 a.m. Now, Pride Month, quote unquote, previously known as the month of June, ended 5 days ago. The royal family put this up on their X page, which has received nearly 500,000, so 494.6 thousand views, 7.7 thousand likes, which is 7.7 thousand too many, saying hashtag Pride 2025. With a rainbow, with a disco ball it appears to be, or mirror ball, and then with sparkles. So you have what is supposed to be, ladies and gentlemen, a defender of the faith. And that defender of the faith, there is a specific faith that they are supposed to preserve and defend. And that is Christianity. That is by virtue of his position as King of England. The monarch of England, or the monarch of Great Britain, is, by definition, the head of the Church of England. The Church of England, church, clue is in the name, is meant to be a Christian church. In our case, Anglican, right? You wonder why so many people are very, very angry with the church and because it's basically run by Satan. The Anglican church is basically run by Satan. Because this is your defender of the faith, ladies and gentlemen. The defender of the faith celebrating the number one cardinal sin of pride. So you have pride, you have wrath, you have lust, you have gluttony, you have sloth. I'm trying to think, what else do we have? Greed. I think greed and gluttony might be the same. I can't actually remember them all off the top of my head. That's not good. That's not good. So, for example, ladies and gentlemen, pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. Envy is a big one in today's society. Absolutely. Lust even more so. But pride is the cardinal, because pride is the one that leads to rejection of God. You could experience lustful thoughts and still realize that God is the Almighty. You can confess those things, or you can do lustful things. You confess those things. And you know, people can pray for you, for your strength, for your forgiveness. You can confess these things via confession, have the demons, you know, torn off you by confession, right? So the reason why pride is at the top is because pride was the one that caused Lucifer, the angel, to fall away, to become discontent, right? Pride was the one where, you know, God was going to lower himself to our nature, basically. You know, that he thought he was so far above us that eventually that caused him to think that he was so far above God as well, or to be above God as well. He got prideful, and that caused him to fall away. That's why pride is the number one cardinal sin. And that's why they say pride comes right before a fall. So ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, why the royal family, the defender of the faith, is celebrating the number one cardinal sin. And ask yourself, who is he really loyal to? Pray for the souls of these servicemen and women as well. They've gone roped into this. This is the post, ladies and gentlemen. And this is where I mean, this is not me just showing that video and saying the royal family said something which they didn't say. This is the post that video is from. You can see here, right here. Pride 2025. Fitting fashion that even they can't do this right. They've done everything else wrong. They can't even do this right because they can't get the fucking month right. And that should encapsulate everything that's wrong with the country at the moment. We've turned prideful. And even in our turn prideful, we can't do it right. That should tell you all you need to know. Thank you very much for watching and listening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope this opened your eyes a little bit more. Please, if you got value out of this, if you happen to even see it, please share it with somebody or share it on your social medias if you find it useful. And yeah, thank you for obviously all your engagement, likes, comments, all stuff like that. I always appreciate it. Please add to the discourse. And I'll catch up with you next time. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, good night, guys, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Hwyl fawr. We'll see you next time. And you take care now. Don't go getting prideful. Don't go going with any of those 7 deadly sins. They will ruin your life, ladies and gentlemen. I'll catch up with you soon. Godspeed.